Hello and welcome to a series of very special Dublin International Film Festival podcasts. This year's festival runs from the 22nd of February to the 2nd of March and promises to be an elevated cinema experience. I'm chatting with writer and producer Mark Adams about his wonderful documentary, Uncut. Fabulous documentary, and it's the glitz, the glamour, the kind of murky undertones of misogyny and negativity. It's warts and all, but very celebratory. It's a beautiful watch, and it's so exciting. Like, it makes you go, oh, I'd love to be there on the red carpet. Tell me about, so you're a programmer, you're a critic, you've seen the festival from all different angles. What started you down the road of doing this documentary?
Well, I think it was exactly that. I mean, a colleague and I were sort of chatting about trying to do a documentary about, we originally started as film trade journalists for Screen International and Variety, Hollywood Reporter. So you were covering Cannes as an industry, but also you were going to all the parties, you were going crazy, you were doing the red carpet, but you were really inside it. And there was that sense of Cannes is so many things, different people. To some people, it's just the red carpet and the outfits. To some, it's the films. To some, it's the deals in the back streets. To some, it's the schmoozing and the boozing. To some, it's just posing by the cars. So it was all these different things. So we just thought, originally we thought, well, let's look at it from the trade's point of view, but actually it expanded because we met other people and they said, there's all these stories. Everyone's got a story. Everyone's got this moment. They say, I did this. I met this person at a bar in 3 a.m. I met this movie star here. I saw this amazing film for the first time ever. I did this. I made my first film and sold it. So it had all these elements. And as you said, it's an amazing place just to be. I mean, it's the most beautiful town. It's this gorgeous sea. It's got these super yachts. It's got all this glamour, but it's also this business place as well. So it's all these contradictions, and it's a lot of fun as well. It's an amazing place to be.
And so that's sort of your background on presenting the documentary or like addressing it. But how did you work with Richard and Roger? Was this something that you guys collaborated on, had planned for a while, and just got a bit of cash?
Yeah, well, it started out that Chris Pickard and I, who's the other, we're the sort of creators of it and the writers of it. We're old friends from working on the trades together. Richard used to work with us 30 years ago as a photographer in Cannes. So we were having a chat with him, and he's got this vast catalogue of photographs he took in Cannes. So the start point was, why don't we make a documentary? Use all of your photographs, Richard. You know, that would be really cool. And Richard has been moving across doing a lot of cinematography and stuff like that. So he said, well, I can borrow a camera from Red and we can probably shoot some stuff. And then we ended up chatting with Colin, who used to run a company called Special Treats. And Special Treats went to Cannes and shot junket stuff. They would put their cameras, they would interview lots of talent down there for various junkets, the interviews and press interviews. So we knew he had footage from Cannes, and Roger is his editor, had been working with him for years. So it was all sort of, I'll join this. And we were just thinking, well, let's just see what we can do and draft something together and just get it going. And then the crazy thing was, the first year we went and shot was the first Cannes after COVID. So it was a weird Cannes to go down to shoot in, and also wasn't as many people there, but actually, and that gave it a strange sense of empty streets and not many people in the bars. So it had a different sort of vibe. But you could shoot some amazing stuff, and it was full of sort of different energy, and people were, glad to be there, reminiscing about the great times because they were back in Cannes again after the break. So it sort of developed and snowballed from there, and we, put money together and sort of just got stuff, but did lots of favors. A lot of contacts that we knew in the industry came and were interviewed because we knew them from many, many years.
Yeah, your access was amazing. I was like, what? What? How did you get them? Oh my God. I just think it's such amazing access, the level of people that you got, it's also gorgeous. It's a very photogenic place, but even the way everything's set up. So this is sort of a passion project that you guys took on over time. Did you maybe bring it to a funder and get support behind it at any point?
Well, we talked to various people at early stages, and I mean, filmmaking, as you know, is a complicated process. But at some point, especially with documentary, you have to sort of get it going because you're prescribed by timing. If we want to go and shoot, you have to get some cameras to go down there anyway. So we thought we had money, and then some dropped out, and then we got some here, and it drifted along. So we shot a lot in Cannes. We got Oliver Stone, and we got various people in Cannes the first time round, and then some more. We went the second year because we were aware that too many people wearing masks times something very much, and that was very much a place and a time. So we wanted to add on that. Then we wanted to get hold of Mike Lee and Ken Loach, people like that, and they were in London at that time, so we shot them there. Tilda was around the second year when we got Tilda to come in and do something, and various other industry people, were there at different times. So it's sort of, it was, you cobble these things together. And then with documentaries, you're all about tracking down archive material, clearing rights for archival footage and archival stuff. So these things always take, a little bit longer, and you have to sort of go through all sorts of hoops to get the right footage and make sure it's being cleaned and digitized and things like that. You can see amazing things, online, but getting the right quality stuff to put in a film is always more complicated.
And how do you raise the funds for that? Because I think one of the great things about this is it doesn't shy away from going, are these practices archaic? And it's famous and infamous at the same time for certain industry gaffes and predators and things. And I'm just I like that it didn't shy away from that. It's celebratory, but it did tackle those. Would you have felt, were you say super upfront when you were interviewing people that you were going to delve into those issues, or was it something that you kind of felt you had to after a point?
No, it was always in the structure that you had to. I mean, originally we talked about possibly doing it as a longer form series, because there's so much stuff that you leave out by its very nature, because it's covering many, many years. So there's all sorts of other stories that you could have put in. But we were very clear that you had to cover, at the start, you had to cover 1968 when the riots, you had to cover Harvey Weinstein, you have to cover Netflix, you have to cover the way the industry has changed and what's happened there, and the strange. And we wanted to do the fashion side of it, the industry side, but also the crazy stunts and the bonkers things that happen around the scenes. So, we very much want to get it very clear to people exactly what we're doing, but also one of the key bits was finally pinning down Thierry Frémaux, who's the head of the festival, and getting him to sit down. And we went over to Paris and sat down with him, and he, I chatted to him for about a couple of hours, I think. And so his stuff very much punctuates the film and is the spine, but also people taking part are aware that Thierry, is part of this and is very upfront and talks about all these issues all the way through, and he's very good about that. He's got a very clear sense of what Cannes was, because he's a film historian, but also where he wants it to be.
And do you think your background, coming from it as a programmer and being in those circles as well, sort of gives you, lets people relax a little bit more than if you were just press, there'd be more of a barrier?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when you work in the trades, you're very much part of the industry. So when you're with Variety and Screen International, you're immersed in the industry as well as being, journalists. So we're not sort of glossy tabloid hacks looking for a story. And yeah, they knew us from then, and from Richard taking photographs of them, and Roger's team and Colin filming for junkets. So they knew people, but they knew that, that we take it seriously, that we're part of that world and we get that world. And I think that's the thing. You understand that you're not sort of trying to be salacious. You could just do stuff on the beaches, and you could just do you could have gone down all sorts of other routes, but it's very important to sort of tackle those aspects, but look at all the other bits as well. But I think you're right. I think the fact that we're part of that world was always very, very important.
And do you think that gives you a unique insight into the processes of the festival as well, that it gives you that sort of understanding of, okay, there's the hype and there's the way that it appears, but actually the work going on behind the scenes is tough too? Yeah,
very much so. Very much so. I mean, I've known Thierry for a long time, and, like Grenier runs Dublin, we're old friends, and we've known all the people who run all the international film festivals. I know the people who run Berlin and San Sebastian and South by Southwest and Sundance. So we all know each other. We understand how that world works. More than anyone, I'm appreciative of what they have to do to make it happen. And how complicated the process is and how it's about the facade is one thing. I mean, that was interesting, I think, for why we want to do it as well, because everyone knows Cannes, every May there's a bunch of footage because it's all red carpets and movie stars, but actually that's it. You don't really see anything else about it. You don't get a sense of what happens over the years. It's on the news sections. It's on the front pages of the Daily Mail or whatever, because whatever Frock or Madonna's doing this on the carpet or Tom Cruise is waving at something. But this is all about the other stuff that goes on and that understanding and appreciation of what everyone goes through, raising the money to get the electric cars, or to what the police have to do, or what the taxi drivers have to do, what the guys running the hotels get involved with. So that is that big holistic sort of thing about what this is, but also how important. I mean, you've been to Berlin, that's such a big festival as well, and you have Berlin, Venice, and Cannes are the big three. But there's no getting away from the Cannes is still, still the big one. And not as much because of the films that are in the competitions, which are amazing, but also as a marketplace for selling cinema. It's astonishing. I mean, you have the Palais where they do the big screenings, you got the red carpet, but underneath the Palais are all the little booths selling films, all the international sales agents hawking movies. And in the hotels, there's sales agents selling films, and there's buyers going from room to room to do deals. So it's that sort of energy that's going on behind the screen, essentially.
And the gossip. Oh my God, like you're going for a coffee somewhere and you're like, I totally would be earwigging and going, oh my God, that like money has gone missing from what production? Oh my God. Like it's just everywhere. Like the whole space is taken up with this sort of very like ferocious energy. It's almost like it's of a scale that's almost unprecedented as well.
Yeah.
And do you find that people don't understand? Like I was looking at this going, Jesus, it would be a great thing for like interns to watch before they go, as in like an instructional video. What was your intention in eliciting something from the audience, or like for the audience, when you were making this?
It's interesting because it's a tough one. We could have been a bit too self-obsessed in the sense of, we understand this industry, it's this, but actually, as I said before, it's many things to many different people. So I think we wanted to make it accessible so anybody could watch it and say, oh, there's some people I recognize, but also people who are in the industry have seen it saying, yeah, wow, I remember that moment, or that story rings a bell, or yes, I've done that as well. So it needs to work on different levels. But I think as an explanation also about how film festivals work. I think that's what has been interesting with other film festivals. It sparks that conversation about, we're in a business now where box office has never really recovered after COVID. There's questions about, streamers and Netflix and whether physical media is going to come back, and where people are watching things and the appetite for seeing films again.
The kind of downfall of the studio mid-budget film, I think, is a massive loss for the industry.
Absolutely. Yeah, but those sorts of budget ranges, it's really hard. It's massive or small. And I think that's where festivals are a great place to talk about it, but also show things that hopefully people can get energized about. I think, especially at the moment, it's hard to market movies. It's hard to get that information out there. It's hard to reach people. Where is the best way? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Is it TikTok? Is it big posters in Leicester Square? Is it, old-fashioned trailers in cinemas? I think it's a really interesting discussion. And, that's why and the great thing about the film world is it reinvents itself the whole time. Just when you think it's this, there's another movie comes along. There's always something new and exciting coming down the way. And that's, it keeps on bouncing back. It's been written off by television originally, or by radio, or by sound, going back in time, there's always been something saying, well, it's the death of this, and streamers was the latest, but actually, you're proving that you can do it. And there's some amazing things. It's interesting now, of course, it's awards season. So it's that time of the year when all those, and you see some of those films out, you see, Poor Things, and you see Oppenheimer. I mean, I think some of those films are astonishing,
And your love of film, has it ever sort of been eroded or jaded at any point from being around it? What are the things that you get that boost or inspiration from being around the industry?
I think it's just that. It's just, going to see something that just blows your mind in a dark room. I think seeing it on the small screen, it never quite has that same impact as seeing it on the big screen. When I've been to Cannes so many years and remember seeing Pulp Fiction in its first ever screening, 8:30 in the morning in the Palais, and you think, wow. Or I remember seeing The Piano there, Jane Campion's film. At the same time, you see some terrible things, and that's, it's hilarious, the rubbish you see as well. But that gives you context, and you think, oh my God, how on earth did that get made? But nobody goes out to make a bad film. Everyone has great intentions. So, but I think it's also being around people who are full of passion and full of energy and full of excitement. And, sometimes you listen to young producers, you think they've discovered penicillin, but it's actually the same things they've been saying to each other for years and years and years. And the bullshit is as interesting as the highs. So that's quite for hearing some of that. And that's the nice thing about, like you say, you sit in bars in Cannes, you hear somebody pitching something. It's the most funny thing sometimes. Or at 3 a.m, they're stood outside a bar doing a different version of the pitch because they've had so much to drink and they're just spieling on. And I think it's always interesting. It's always exciting to see new directors come through, or new writers, or performers. You see somebody who's in a film 10 years ago coming through, or you see a director who went to Cannes, slept on the beach, and blagged their way into a party and have come through and made something.
That's fabulous. And how does it feel being at the other side, like submitting to festivals and be sitting in there with audiences of critics and industry people, like tentatively? Does it change your relationship to work, basically?
I don't think so. I think because I was running a film festival before, you learn to be a bit more pragmatic and realistic, because I was a critic for a long time as well, and I've done all that sort of stuff. I've done national newspapers and trades, so I understand where people are coming from, and I understand why some film festivals will say no and some film festivals say yes, and I get all that side of things. There's no point being precious or throwing your toys out of the pram with these sorts of things. Everyone works in different ways, and that's fine. But it's interesting, just being with an audience is always fascinating, because that's what we sit there, as you're editing something and you're putting something, God, is anybody ever going to see this? So it's interesting seeing people's responses and just hearing what they have to say, especially when you're meeting people who've been to Cannes, who have got their own story, and they say, yeah, I saw that, I remember when this happened to me, or I heard about this, and those things are always fascinating.
And talk to me about working with collaborators. So it sounded very much so like the four of you guys together really sort of like made this a project. How does that work just logistically? Who makes the kind of final call? Is it a negotiation, a democracy? How does the workflow work?
Well, it's been very, very tight. I mean, Chris and I very much originated and did the original because we're writers. We could draft the documents and draft the sort of decks and the pitches and be very clear about that. Richard is very much visuals, and camera. Roger is very much the editing. I mean, they're directors, but actually in truth, we're all, because a documentary, you all it's not a sort of auteur-driven piece. It's very much a collaborative thing. So we all sort of chip in, and we're all very much on the same mindset. So getting it together was actually quite straightforward. It was, but Roger's a great editor. So once you got going, and it's all about then juggling and timings and where it should fit into how the ebbs and flows of a story and where the arcs are and things like that. But, we just, it's very easy just to keep in touch with these things. And then when you're on the ground, you just find yourself doing it and getting on with it. And it's, we're hassling the cinematographer, saying, look, there's a shot here we need to get, or we've got this person in this room. And, sometimes it was, Cannes, that Cannes after COVID, it was really windy, and those things play havoc with sound, or, there's always a bin collector in Cannes crashing glass around or delivering stuff at the wrong time, isn't there? It's one of those practicalities. And these are, especially when dealing with people who've got limited time because they're rushing between meetings, pinning them down is always a challenge. So there we got through the process going, and then we talked to a sales agent, and the sales agent will handle the film internationally, and they're placing the film and selling to broadcasters in different countries around the world at the moment, and they're placing the film in festivals. So you have to let them do their work, and they're a really good company in Austria called Outlook Film, who do a lot of Oscar-nominated documentaries and things like that. So that's all cool. So you have to sort of let it go. You can't hang on to it. You've got to let it do its own thing. And some people are going to like it, some people aren't, and that's fine.
And have you sat in an audience with the film? Have you kind of like felt what it's like to watch the film with an audience? Because I'd say that does change it.
Yeah, I've been in a couple of, I've been in the first one in Cannes where it's very much buyers. And the buyers Cannes screenings are always funny because it's always somebody walking out after 10 minutes because they've got to be somewhere else. So you've got to sort of park your ego on that one, the slapping of the chair as somebody crashes out and things like that. And then we've done other sort of private screenings and to different sort of like trade groups and things like that. There was to the cinematographers and stuff like that. And that's, again, so it'll be interesting. With public, it's a very different thing as well, because that's, there's a different sort of dynamic of somebody who doesn't work in the industry and will recognize different things and take different things out of it. So that's always interesting as well.
Yeah. And actually, sorry, I'm just realizing we kind of didn't like lock down, because I didn't ask this properly, with regards to the collaboration. Just say if there's, I'm always interested to how the negotiation works when it comes to creative choices.
Yeah.
Was it like you were always on the same page? Was it that the directors kind of between them, like, decided on the structure or arcs of the beat? Did anything change?
No, we all, as a group, decided on that structure. And everyone has views, but I think, it's very much originated from Chris and I, because we did the original sort of structure and draft and had a sense of how that journey should be. Roger as an editor has a different sort of, not different, but he brought different things in, and his beats are based on some of the music cues or some of the visual cues and things like that. So, there's different assemblers at different times. So then we just sat together and said, that works best. We should think about this. Then we had to put together an hour-long version for a TV sale version. So that has a different sort of structure as well. So it's been pretty painless in that sense of doing that stuff. I think maybe because documentaries, and especially archival driven or interview driven, are different sort of beasts, obviously from a narrative piece or from an auteur driven documentary, which is one voice carrying a journey. This is very much, we can build that structure and write that structure out.
And did you, like, again, there's so much kind of content, and you did get and I did like that, because I think that's very much the vibe, like, that people pitching in the documentary. Yeah. and that thing. But was there anything that sort of you were like, oh, we have to leave it, it can't be longer, I'd love to include this as we go, or spend more time with this as you're editing?
Yeah, there's always stuff. There's stuff you can't either afford because of the archive rights are so expensive, or because there isn't as much footage of the big inflatable Arnold Schwarzenegger that floating in the bay, and there's not as much footage of some of the earlier stunts and things like that, which would have been fun to put in. But equally, right at the start, the story about Cannes itself is really interesting. I find it very interesting, but maybe it wouldn't work in the film, which is about this Scottish lord who wanted to find somewhere in Cannes to convalesce, and he went to Nice originally, but then there was a pandemic in Nice and he ended up in Cannes. So there's a big statue of the Scottish lord in the middle of Cannes. The film festival, essentially, Cannes became a successful place because of a pandemic, which was really ironic at the time we were shooting, was about the pandemic. And then this story about, whether it was going to be Biarritz or Cannes, and then this, the first year, the fact that the first Cannes was going to be in 1939, and then the war happened just as Cannes was about to start. And so it all sort of, but that also that dynamics between Cannes and Berlin and that sort of period is fascinating. But there's always things. Also there's periods when maybe there isn't as much footage that we could find. As I say, people shot stuff for television programs like, Barry Norman Film 2000, or different countries would send crews to film their director, but there's nobody ever did pieces about behind the scenes, really. It was all red carpets or interviews with directors on the beach. There's not as much stuff that showed Cannes during the festival at different times. So finding that footage was always a challenge and was interesting.
And that is very interesting. And one of the things actually we were kind of talking about earlier there. So you've come from the trades, you've come from journalism. Do you find like it's a very different form of storytelling, even though it is sort of factual? There's more of like an emotive narrative to it. And I think this film is very, very emotive. I think you're really brought on a journey, the highs, the lows, the arcs. Like you're there with the filmmakers being so excited walking up like the red carpet and what that means for everybody. I'm just curious to, do you feel like as a form of storytelling, this is very, very far removed from journalism? Do you feel your work there fed into your ability to kind of create this, or do you feel like it was different or a different process? And
I don't know. I think you wanted to tell a story, and there are so many different sort of. We sort of, Chris and I essentially started viewing it as a book and these different sort of chapter heads, or as a long form series. And, you wanted to tackle this in this period, 68, or the riots here, or this happening, or the arrival of 1970s independent cinema, or the power of Golem and Globus and the Weinsteins and buying or changing technologies. So you had to sort of cover different beats during it. And I think, you could approach it differently. You could go out and say, we're going to follow a young filmmaker for their first time in Cannes and track what they do and things like that and follow their journey. You could take a journey, one person's journey. But I think what was interesting for all of us, I think, was that Cannes is all these people's different journeys at the same time, that people walking up the red carpet, the stars don't have any real idea about what happens on the Rue d'Anty, where the cinemas are and the buyers are in these screenings, or in the hotel rooms where deals are being done, or the restaurants in the Du Cap, or the big parties up in the hills. They're as alien to each other that not everybody can get a ticket for the train spotting party or the Moulin Rouge party. They're the holy grail of. But are they what Cannes is about? Is it about just the rosé in the back streets, meeting somebody that next year might fund your project? There's all these different elements, I think. So we wanted to each have their chance to feed in. Otherwise, it would have just been, I think, one tone. Or you could have just done archival footage and just said, this is the history. These are the big films. We didn't focus as much, weirdly, on the films themselves. You could have had lots of time doing extracts from films and talking about this, had this. But actually, it was interesting seeing the reaction of different filmmakers at different times and having their experiences and talking about. It was fascinating hearing, Mike Lee and those people talk about what it was like being on the jury in Cannes, because they don't really talk about that side of things. That's quite fascinating, how you decide on what the winning films or what that experience is like, being, put in a hotel and told not to talk to anybody and being in amongst all these people. And these are different sort of aspects that you don't really talk about as much normally.
that's fascinating. One of the things actually that really struck me visually is how overwhelmingly masculine the photographers were. Like there was just no women involved. And then, like those other elements of, say, misogyny and like, I mean that thing with the heels that just went everywhere. I don't know, especially like you have no time for it once you're over, not in your 20s, and you're not trying to show off. But like, how do you sort of feel about marrying those two things? And it did, like, I mean, you do get like even the reaction to the streamers. Like, I think it's a healthy form of criticism. This film is. But would you be kind of like nudging them into the future? Do you think it's nice to maintain tradition?
Well, it's interesting because Cannes is different only because it's linked into the French film industry and their distribution structures and that time gaps between any kind of theatrical and that sort of element. So they have a different sort of dynamic in how they work on their industry, But what it's allowed Venice to come in and show all of these big Netflix films and get lots of sort of big attention. And Thierry's, I think just yesterday, was talking about how they're not going to be doing stuff, and it's still, they love all these filmmakers, but he doesn't see Fincher as being, the filmmaker he was, because his films are going straight to Netflix, and that's their stance. But it's also their stance linked also to the French film industry, so it has a different sort of beast. I mean, it's a tough one because my feeling is that a great film's a great film, and if it looks great on the big screen and it's a chance to show it there and celebrate it, then that is the place it should be. But these festivals are very different. You're talking about, it's got to be world premieres, it's got to be first time screenings, it's literally hot from the developing. It's that sort of dynamic. I've worked in film festivals where you don't care about that sort of stuff. It's a different sort of beat, so you can be much more flexible about that sort of stuff. But here it's you're the first out. It's a big deal. So I get where they're coming from. It's a shame because I remember they did. I mean, I've been in Cannes when they did show Netflix films. They showed on, Okja, and they showed a couple of other films, I think, and Baumbach had a film there, and they've had to adjust it because of the industry as much as anything else. But it's allowed Toronto and Venice to show those big films and have that different sort of, so they've all started adjusting. But the industry is changing constantly. I mean, Cannes, it's showing some television stuff now, and it's doing different things. They do their free screenings on the beach. I guess maybe they can get around stuff there by doing the free screenings. And things will happen alongside it that, there's private screenings of these films for buyers. This stuff still happens behind the scenes. It's just sort of, I mean, of course, Cannes, the other thing about Cannes is, of course, it's, you have these big red carpet screenings, but they're not for the public, unlike Berlin, Toronto, and Venice. The public can't get into Cannes. It's always invite only or, industry tickets. There's no ordinary people in Cannes watching films. It's an interesting thing as a film festival. There's a few repetition screenings later in the week, and there's local people can get so many tickets and things like that. But it's not, you can't get them if you just Joe Public driving down there to want to go and buy a ticket. It doesn't happen in the same way.
Yeah. And tell me actually about this film and about your process as the writer producer. Would you be on every cut of this? Would you save your eyes for like a fresh cut? Where would your involvement kind of go in and pull out there?
Well, we went in at different times. So we did the first assemblies based on the structure that we decided on. So it's how you can fit those things into that structure. So there's a lot of debate about how you start and how you different arcs, and it's different beats at different points. So then, Colin goes off and sits in dark rooms and presses buttons. I don't understand. I mean, that world is so mysterious to me, but it's amazing when you see what people are doing. And also it's that sound beats as well as an overlapping visuals. And then you're thinking about, well, do we need intertitle cards? There's some nice quotes that come up. We talked about, do you need a narration? Do you go with a voice, or do you try and link it visually? Because driving a documentary with just visuals is obviously more complicated than an oral cue, which tells you what's happening. So you have to make all those decisions as you're going along. And then, you sit, thank God, I wish we got that bit of footage, because that would have just helped either link these things together or been this defining moment. But you have to deal with what you've got. So it's just a process. So you just keep on talking and you keep on putting stuff together, and you think, well, yeah, that's right, but it just needs this, or this needs to be a bit shorter. Do we need as much of this? This gets a bit clunky at certain points. There's so much, so much footage that in so many other interviews, I always feel awful about the interviews which didn't make it, because, we talked to various people, a lot of them who are friends of mine, and had to tell them, sorry, you didn't feature, which is terrible.
Well, that's the series then, when you get to
Exactly.
It'll all be there for when you get your series deal on Netflix. And tell me, is there anything sort of that you like learn from this process? Because I presume it's just, you've been around the industry for so long, you think you have like a very solid view of it. Has it shifted in any way? Is there anything that you have really picked up?
I think it's been, it's fascinating. You're a filmmaker as well. It's a fascinating process just learning about that side of it. And I've been, as you said, I've done that for a long time. And I understand how the industry works, but actually being involved with it on a physical level is very, very different. I've done interviews before, but it's interesting interviewing people to get something from them to fit into a structure as well. And it's also, I've written, and I know sales agents. I understand how they work. I used to buy films when I was doing distribution. I understand about doing deals and getting projects, but it's interesting seeing how you fit in a landscape that's changing. I mean, about, 3-4 years ago, documentaries were selling for big money and a lot of money, but then that doc world has changed subtly, and that Netflix aren't spending as much, and now they want stuff that's mainly about true crime or sexual harassment or old murder stories, so what piques an interest changes, and these things flex. But also different countries, it's an international thing. Different countries take a different view, and they want certain things. They can see things that one country might not. This has, perhaps one could argue, there's a fair few British people in it because we're UK based and we could access, Mike and Ken and these sorts of people. And it would have been nice to have had the money to go to LA and shoot lots of interviews. That's just not a reality. I've gone to Rio and gone to Spain and gone to Russia, wherever, and gone to shoot lots more interviews. But you have to sort of draw lines in practical reality. So there's that, how it works is based on practical realities and making things fit into that situation because of what you have to work with.
And if there was one thing that maybe if you had like unlimited time that you'd be like, oh, I would love to have gotten that, like unlimited budget, like if there was that, like that, whatever the restrictions were, that I also think make like for creative thinking and make things stronger in the long run. But like if there was that thing where you're like, oh, I'd love that thing. That isn't the giant Arnold.
The big giant Arnold, yeah, no more giant Arnold. I think it would have been more about access and behind the scenes type of things because, again, Cannes is linked into broadcasters. They have, exclusive rights to certain aspects of the way that festival works. So you can't get your camera and wander behind the scenes and shoot them. So you have to, and that would have been lovely to have that sense of being in the hotel room with actors or the nervousness before they go on stage or as they're about to go on stage or what those reactions are. That would have been a really interesting personal journey, but that's not, available to you. And also there's, especially now, security is ramped up so much. There's so much, military in Cannes now. There's because they had, ram incidents a few years back in Nice, I think. So all the barriers are up, and the police are much more. The vibe has changed so much. You can't just do things in that same way. So I think you always wish you could put drones up and do, but again, they'll be shot down by all that sort of stuff. So that's always interesting. But I think whenever you do the things you want more, you always think, I wish we'd got that, or wish we could have been there the following year when X and Y happened, or when they had this and that. And so, but you have to just draw lines. You have to sort of say, and it's interesting. I mean, it's fascinating just hearing some of the stories being told by Mike Leigh or by, Wim Wenders or Binoche or, Tilda and stuff like that. They, Tilda loves the palm dog and loves that side of things and the wacky side of it. And I think,
who doesn't love it? Like, it's such a good idea.
And Toby's been doing it for years now, and he's done an amazing job of building this thing. We could have talked about the much seedier side of it. I mean, there used to be a time when they had the porn awards at the same time as the Palme d'Or. They had these things called the hot doors, and there used to be a yacht with all the porn awards were given out at the same time. And there used to be much more, dodgier stuff in the 60s and 70s, and these things are a bit more uncomfortable. You can mention them, but I think focusing on would have been inappropriate. So it's bad enough having Harvey using Cannes as a hunting ground and things like that. These things are, and that's why we wanted to sort of tackle that and deal with it and get it sorted out and be very clear.
God, it sounds like there's definitely a wealth of a series. I would completely watch that. How has the industry responded to it so far? What has been sort of good, bad?
It's been great because the industry love to look at that because, for them, it's a chance to say, God, yeah, I was there for that. I remember that, or this thing happened to me that was very similar. So they relish that side of it because it's their world, and it's not sort of poking fun at that world. It's being respectful, but understanding it, that it's fun and crazy and stupid and ridiculous and exciting and energetic. It's all these adjectives you can think of at the same time. I mean, there's a guy there, I think one of the quotes it's a guy called David Lindy, who runs Participant, which is one of the big American production companies. He used to run Columbia, and I've known him for years when he used to be a sales agent on the Croisette doing stuff. And he just says he just talks about how crazy it is, how mad it is, but how exciting it is and how important it is at the same time. So that's the funny thing about it. It's all these things happening at the same time.
Yeah. Oh God. And I'm just thinking back to that clip of Lars,
oh God, yeah.
Like my whole neck when I was watching it just like shortened to this because it was so excruciating, and you can just see everyone else in shock going.
Oh, you see Kirsten just shivering by her. Oh. And Wendy who talks about it, she's great. She's a friend of mine, is a film critic as well. She's really good at it. But it's fascinating, seeing those moments. And he's never really recovered from that. That's that. And he was just trying to be funny. He just dug it, and he wouldn't stop digging. It's ridiculous.
Oh, it's such a public platform for like a gap, do you know? Like it's just, I think that's it. It is sort of like literally the world press is there.
Yeah.
Do you think social media has sort of changed the dynamic of, number one, how films are received, and then two, maybe the festival? Like again, anonymity probably isn't a thing. Like if people get trashed, it's gonna go up on TikTok. Anyone, even with a lick of fame.
I think you're right. I mean, you know, you don't want to get sort of, you can wax nostalgic a bit too much about the old days when, I mean, when we did first used to go to Cannes, nobody really, you do pieces at the end of it. Nobody was really interested in coverage from Cannes because it was too much hassle to ship the photographs back or get on this is pre-internet. So you're faxing things. And so it was a very complicated process. Then mobile phones obviously made a massive difference. But it's interesting, Cannes has now have changed the structure of screening. So now press go to press screenings after the first screening, so they can't do tweets during it, and competitive trashing of films was going on before it even had a chance. So that's the nature of clickbaity media has changed that thing as well. So, the world has changed all the time, and it's, that's been going on for a while now. But I think good stuff always rises, and that's the good thing about it. The danger is that something can be misunderstood early and gets shot out and then it's lost. And that's the problem about Cannes. You're very exposed there. You get shot out, you can be dead in the water within a few days, and it's very hard then to rehabilitate. So that's why a lot of filmmakers famously don't want to be in competition, because if you're in competition, you're going to lose. One of you's going to lose. So best to be out of competition and have a gala screening, because there's always a possibility of not succeeding if you're in competition.
Yeah, that's it. Look, I wasn't even trying to win it. It's not for me.
I just wanted to show you guys. It's not a big deal.
God. And so you will have your own screening. Are you coming over to DIFF for it? Are you going to be watching from afar?
Yeah, no, I'm coming over I forget when I'm coming over, actually. I'm doing the documentary jury work for them as well. And so I'm watching a whole bunch of the other documentaries, which is great. So I'll come over for a few days. And it's great because I always used to come to Dublin when I was a journalist, a critic, and when I was running Edinburgh. So as I say, Gráinne and I are old friends, so it's nice to come. And so I think it's a great festival and it's a great city. So I'm really excited to be there again.
Great, and congratulations. And it's a really gorgeous film. It really kind of encapsulates the glamour and the glitz of the industry, and you can catch it on the big screen as part of DIFF.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to watch it, so thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Cannes Uncut screens on the 27th of February in the Lighthouse Cinema at 1:30, and you can explore the Dublin International Film Festival programme and buy tickets now at diff.ie.